Cover system in games. 2023, pretty recent. This looks great. This is something that as a beginner, if you want a cover system, you would be like, oh, I need to place all this manually everywhere. Or maybe I use prefabs, you could just reuse the things everywhere. I'm not going to go in detail about what has been implemented, how it works and so on. I'm more going to skim through it and talk about is this something you should actually consider for your game or not? Or how can this help you in your game? In one of my other videos where we implement an AI system in Final State Machine, we gave a simple cover system for the enemy and we manually placed cover points around the map. And that would be the simplest way to position cover points. So the level designer, or in case of indie dev, you, that does everything anyway, you would go on and place your markers around the map and create your cover points like that. You might benefit from using prefabs. Maybe this object is a prefab. So whenever you put this object anywhere, this object comes with the cover points. You would have the issue of, if you drag and drop this somewhere with all those cover points and there's already another object here, well, those cover points become invalid. So how do you remove them? Do you manually, let's say, unparent this prefab and remove those cover points? Or do you do something at runtime to remove those cover points and check if they are valid? All those are a thing to think about. In this one, he goes around the mesh, so tries to find edges in the navigational map, and uses a lot of raycast to cast rays all around the mesh and find out, okay, where are cover points that qualify as providing enough coverage for an NPC. You can do a lot of fun stuff, like at the moment of raycasting, you can also then check what is this object. Is it wood? Is it metal? Is it rock? Is it big, small? Can it break? Does it have a reference to some health or any kind of thing that is destructible or changeable over time? And that way you can store this reference on each of the cover points. So when an NPC comes and say, oh, I would like to take this cover point, he can check and say, oh, is this actually safe? Does it provide still okay protection? Is this just wood? If the player has a big machine gun and there's just a wood plank here, maybe the AI is smart enough to say, okay, the player is shooting with a big gun, I need to hide behind rocks or metal and not really just a piece of wood. So that's one example of one object, right? A level designer would just put the things all around and call it a day. Now, how can you generate this at runtime? Well, he goes around the mesh. I'm just going to jump here to show you. Once he finds something that could be a cover, he just scans around it, and then those points here, those red points are not covers, as I understood from the article, and the other one are covers. So he can find positions all around the mesh in this way. Kind of like that. So here in the middle is a good cover point, here not, right? Because he's exposed, here not, he's exposed. And so on. So this was one of the results that he has. And you can ask yourself, like, if you would be placing covers manually, would you place them at those places or would you also place them at other places? I think I would be placing them pretty much at the same place. It would depend if I can crouch or not. If you can crouch, then here and here could also be valid points. Depends of what your game provides. Maybe even here. But this algorithm didn't find a place here. So should you generate your covers dynamically with code or should you place them manually? As always, it depends, right? It depends on the size of your game and how long you need to generate those or to write the code to generate those covers, because that's code that you have to maintain and so on. My guess would be that for bigger games, you probably want a mixture of both worlds. You want to be able to quickly place cover points all around your map automatically, but then you will have to go point by point or zone by zone and validate them. Because you will find bugs, you will find things that are weird, and you don't want to go back and have to tune your algorithm to have perfect cover points placement all around your world. You just want to have an initial starting point, so you win this time of, okay, I have 500 cover points that I have to put. The algorithm just puts them all over the place, and then you go over them, and you just do kind of the quality control. You fix those that are really bad, you remove those that are making no sense, and you maybe add one or two here and there that you as a kind of an art director think, no, for my storytelling, I need cover points here and there because it will be so cool if an enemy hides there. That's the kind of things that is probably later being done in practice. For sure in big games, in smaller games, it's a trade-off. You need to see if you really want to go the cover generation path or not. Here it talks about artifacts. So I also mentioned it briefly. Yeah, if something is wrong, you need to way to edit it. I think that's a must. Otherwise, you will waste time. Otherwise, you try to create the perfect algorithm, which might maybe be needed for your game. If your game is highly dynamic, where players can generate their own environment, then of course, if it's like user-generated content and you need a dynamic cover generation, but there is no more like the state of the level is not in your hands anymore because it's a user-generated level, then of course the generation of covers must be pretty robust, or at least minimize the errors and the silly stuff. So here it goes also in detail about how each cover is evaluated, which is also interesting things. No possibility to shoot from the top of the cover, the ability to shoot from the sides, line of sight, and so on. There is a lot to do with covers, and you also need to think of how much can you generate before and how much you need to generate at runtime, let's say during a loading screen, and what do you need to generate at runtime during gameplay. Like if you have objects that can be destructible, of course, a wall breaks down, falls, the cover points needs to either get invalidated, get removed, their score needs to maybe be reduced, or let's say the NPC hides behind a metallic wall and the player shoots really strong on the wall and the wall damages over time. So maybe that also affects the score of this cover point. So then when an NPC comes and say, oh, I need to hide somewhere, which point do I take? Because here there are many points. So one part is placement that we talked before. Okay, so the NPC should decide what could be a good place for me to go. And here is then the second level is like, okay, I know where to go. Where can I hide myself or find cover? So that's then the second point in the evaluation where, maybe based on the health of the player, he can choose to take more risk or less risk. Maybe based on the ability or speed of the enemy, he can choose to take a point that is more far away, or maybe a point that is closer. If the enemy can run fast, maybe he can allow himself to cross across the map to take a point that is safer at the risk of being shot at. But since he's fast, then that would be a good solution. This kind of stuff. And as always, let's not overcomplicate things. Like if you store on each cover point information about that cover, let's say how great is the object covering it, is it broken or does it still have resistance? How many maybe NPCs or enemies are already at this cover point area? Because maybe you don't want that every enemy just goes to their favorite place and they all rush there. Maybe you want to find a way to distribute this in a simple way, so that it's again the player feels that all the enemies are plotting against him and trying to apply a strategy to surround him, when in fact it's just weights and scores that the enemy thinks, oh, this cover point is fine for me and I will shoot from here. And that's it. So very interesting. This is really a big subject, and I think honestly making tutorials on that is really tough, and it's always a case-by-case thing. You might find assets that help you do that, but it's again coming from what I said in an earlier video, avoiding that all your enemies just like rush to the player. your enemies needs, like in all tutorials, you learn that nav mesh, enemy, target, player. Let's go there. And it's really not what you want. It's like enemy, the nav mesh is just a tool for moving around, but the target in combat is rarely the player. It's always some place in the environment that allows the enemy to attack the player. It's not the player itself. And that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Go work on your game.